Chosen one, she thought that recording was gone. She thought it deleted itself, the same way secrets are supposed to disappear once they've done their damage. No trace, no proof. Nothing but a story people half remember by next week. She was wrong. Because somewhere between the night she opened your private messages and repeated them out loud to a room that never should have heard your name in that context, and the morning your phone wouldn't stop buzzing, something she forgot existed was quietly waiting to be found. A recording. Her own voice. Her own words. Saved in a folder she thought nobody could reach, time-stamped, undeniable, and about to move faster than the lie she told about you ever did. She called herself your best friend for years. She sat across from you at dinners. She laughed at your jokes until she cried. She held your hand through the breakup you never told anyone else about. She memorized your fears, your family, the version of you that only exists behind a locked door. And then one night, she opened all of it up in front of people who were never invited into your life, and she did it smiling. She thought the trail would end at a screenshot nobody could trace back to her. She had no idea that in the middle of telling that story, in someone else's kitchen, on someone else's phone, she was being recorded, and that recording was about to trace every single word straight back to her mouth. Before this goes any further, hit like and subscribe. Not for me, for the next chosen one, scrolling through this exact same night, wondering if the truth ever actually surfaces. It does. It just doesn't run on your timeline. It runs on its own. Here's what she never understood about you. She thought your silence after the leak meant you had nothing left to say. She expected you to spend the week explaining, defending, posting the paragraph and deleting it and posting it again. You didn't. You went quiet. And that silence wasn't surrender. It was the exact same quiet a courtroom holds right before the evidence gets played out loud for everyone to hear. Number 1. The night she picked. She chose that night carefully, not randomly, carefully. She waited until you were somewhere you couldn't watch the group chat in real time. She waited until enough people were online to make it travel fast. She waited until the timing gave her exactly the reaction she wanted. That is not an accident. That is a decision. The kind of decision someone only makes when they've thought about how to hurt you for longer than one night. She knew your secrets because you handed them to her, not because she'd spent years earning the right to hold them. You trusted her the way you trust the one person who's supposed to be your person. And that night, she opened every one of those secrets, like a drawer nobody gave her permission to touch, and she read the contents out loud to an audience. You didn't feel it happen in real time. That's the part that still stings. You were living an ordinary night, while somewhere else your name was being passed around like a headline nobody bothered to fact-check. By the time you saw the first message, the story had already moved through 3 separate chats and landed in the inbox of someone you never wanted to know any of it. That's how a leak works. It doesn't ask permission to travel, it just moves, and it moves fastest through the people who were waiting for a reason to talk about you. Here's what she miscalculated. She believed a leak survives without proof, that the truth of what she did would blur into rumor fast enough that no one could ever trace it back to a single mouth. She believed secrets, once loose, become communal property, untraceable, unowned, safe for the person who let them go. What she forgot is that somewhere in the middle of telling that story, she was being recorded, not by you, not by design. Just by the kind of chance the universe seems to specialize in whenever someone gets too comfortable holding a lie. You didn't post the vague caption everyone expected. You didn't type the explanation into your notes app at 2 a.m. and almost post it. You did the one thing that confused everyone, waiting for you to break. You said nothing. You let the story exist without your commentary, because some part of you already understood what she didn't. A leak needs a reaction to survive. Take the reaction away, and it starts collapsing under its own weight within days. That first night is the one she will replay for the rest of her life. Not because of what she said about you, but because of what she didn't know was already true. Somewhere, on a device she never thought to check, a version of that same night existed in her own voice, and it told a very different story than the one she spread about you. Think of it like a fire someone lights on purpose, in dry grass, on a windy night, fully confident it will burn in exactly the direction she aimed it. That's what a leak like this really is. A fire started with intention, meant to spread outward and consume only the reputation it was pointed at. What she never planned for was the wind changing. Fires lit that carelessly don't always stay contained to the target someone chose for them. Sometimes they double back on the hand that struck the match, and by the time that happens, there's no controlling which direction the flames decide to travel next. Number 2. Why she picked you specifically. People assume betrayal is random, that anyone close enough gets used eventually. It isn't random. She didn't choose you because you were convenient. She chose you because you were quiet about your wins, careful with your pain, and generous with your trust, which made you the easiest kind of person to study without ever getting caught studying you. She didn't befriend you by accident. Somewhere along the way, whether she admitted it to herself or not, she clocked exactly how much you'd tell her and exactly how little you'd ever suspect her of using it. Think about how much she knew, not surface things, not your favorite color or your coffee order. She knew the argument you had with your mother that you never told anyone else about. She knew the thing you did in your early 20s that still keeps you up some nights. She knew which stories would land the hardest if repeated to the wrong room, and she chose those specific stories on purpose. That's not friendship collecting information by accident. That's someone building a file. This is the part people don't want to admit about the friends who hurt them the deepest. The betrayal is never clumsy. It's precise. She didn't fumble your secrets out by mistake in a moment of weakness. She picked the exact details that would do the most damage and delivered them with a smile intact, because somewhere in her, she'd already decided you were a story she was allowed to tell, not a person she owed loyalty to, a story. You might be asking yourself why you didn't see it coming. Here's the honest answer. You weren't supposed to. People who plan this kind of thing spend years building the exact kind of trust that makes betrayal invisible until it's already happened. She showed up for your birthday. She remembered your allergies. She sat with you in hospital waiting rooms. Every one of those moments was real to you, and that's exactly why the leak worked as well as it did. Because nobody expects the person who sat with them in a waiting room to turn around and hand their pain to a group chat for entertainment. But here's what she never accounted for. The same closeness that let her collect your secrets also put her in rooms where she talked too freely, too often, and too confidently about what she'd done. Because she never imagined you'd have proof. She never imagined anyone would care enough to record her bragging about it. She built her entire plan around the idea that your trust in her was the only thing that mattered in this story. She never planned for someone else's trust in her running out at the exact same time. There's a particular kind of person who does this, and it's worth naming so you recognize it faster the next time it shows up. It's rarely the loud one, the obviously jealous one, the person everyone already keeps at arm's length out of instinct. It's almost always the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who remembers your coffee order and shows up early to help you move apartments. Danger dressed as convenience is the hardest kind to spot, because convenience never asks you to be suspicious of it. It just asks you to keep talking, keep trusting, keep handing over the next piece without ever wondering where the last piece went. Number 3, the performance she kept up for years. This is the part that will make your stomach turn the most, chosen one, so let's not soften it. What she did to you wasn't a single bad night. It was the final scene of a performance she'd been running for a long time. Every dinner, every late-night phone call, every time she said, "I've got you," all of it existed inside the same relationship where she was quietly deciding what your secrets were worth to other people. People like this don't wake up one day and become disloyal. They rehearse loyalty the way an actor rehearses a role, hitting every beat convincingly enough that even the person closest to them never questions the script. She never flinched when she said she was proud of you. She never hesitated when she hugged you after bad news. That's exactly why it worked for as long as it did. Because loyalty performed well enough is indistinguishable from real loyalty, right up until the moment it isn't. You gave her access most people never earn. You let her see you cry. You let her see you unsure of yourself, scared, embarrassed, human in the ways you don't show casual friends. That access was never supposed to be a weapon. It was supposed to be the safest place in your life. And she turned it into leverage the second she decided your story was more valuable spread than protected. Here's the question that probably keeps circling back. Was any of it real? Some of it might have been. People who betray others aren't always villains in every scene of their own life. Some of them genuinely liked you and still chose to hurt you anyway, because liking someone and respecting them were never the same thing to her. That's a harder truth to sit with than simple villainy, because it means the friendship wasn't fake in every frame. It just wasn't strong enough to survive the moment it became inconvenient to protect you. What she didn't count on is that a performance held together for years doesn't just disappear the moment the curtain drops. People remember patterns, and once the leak happened, people who'd watched her operate for years started quietly replaying every small inconsistency they'd noticed and dismissed. The way she'd casually repeat things she shouldn't have known. The way she lit up a little too much whenever gossip involved you specifically. Nobody said anything at the time, but nobody forgets it either. And once the recording surfaced, every one of those small memories stopped looking like coincidence and started looking like proof of exactly who she'd been the entire time. Ask yourself honestly whether you ever caught a flicker of it before that night. A joke that landed a little too sharp, a detail she mentioned that you never remembered telling her, a look on her face when someone else got attention that lasted half a second too long. You probably did. Most people do, somewhere in the back of their mind, and most people talk themselves out of it the same way you probably did, because it's easier to trust the performance than to question the person giving it. That instinct isn't weakness. It's what happens when someone spends years making themselves believable on purpose. Number 4. The room where it spread. Picture the room, because she certainly remembers it. A handful of people, half attention on their phones, and her voice carrying the kind of confidence that only shows up when someone believes they're untouchable. She didn't whisper your secrets like something sacred she was reluctantly sharing. She performed them. She built up the story the way people build up gossip they've been sitting on for weeks, waiting for the right audience to land it with. And the room gave her exactly what she wanted: gasps, laughs, the kind of attention that makes a person feel powerful for exactly as long as the story holds up. Nobody in that room stopped her. That's worth sitting with for a second, because it says something about the room, not just about her. Some of them didn't know you well enough to care. Some of them knew you well enough to feel a flicker of discomfort and stayed quiet anyway, because interrupting the main character of a story mid-performance takes a kind of courage most people don't have in the moment. Silence in that room wasn't neutral. It was permission, and she took it as exactly that. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, is that one phone in that room was already recording. Not because anyone was hunting for evidence against her. Sometimes the universe doesn't need a plan that elaborate. Sometimes someone is just filming a different moment entirely. A joke, a toast, a random clip for later, and your name and your secrets get swept up in the background audio of something that was never about you at all. That's how it works more often than people admit. The truth doesn't always need a spy. It just needs a phone that happened to be recording at the wrong moment for the wrong person. The story spread out of that room within hours. Screenshots, retellings, the slow telephone game distortion that makes every version a little worse than the last. By the time it reached you, half of what people were repeating wasn't even accurate anymore. But it didn't need to be accurate. It just needed to travel. And travel it did, carried by a room full of people who let her have the floor because nobody wanted to be the one who took it away from her. Picture two versions of that same room, side by side. In the first, she's the center of attention, controlling the pace, choosing which details land where, adjusting her delivery based on which reactions get the biggest laugh. In the second, the room hears the exact same words, except now nobody's laughing, because a phone doesn't perform for effect the way a person does. A phone just records what happened, flatly, without the charm she used to soften it the first time. The story didn't change between those two rooms. Only the performance disappeared, and without the performance, all that was left was the truth standing there on its own. Here's the part that should sit differently with you now than it did that first week. That same room, the one that let her perform without objection, is the same room that will eventually hear the recording. And a room that stayed quiet while she told a story about you will not stay quiet once it hears her telling that same story in a voice that proves exactly how deliberate it was. Number 5. Why your silence made her nervous. She expected a reaction from you. She needed one. People who leak a secret are often chasing the same thing: proof that the story landed, proof that you're rattled, proof that she still has power over your image even after everything. That's why the first few days without a response from you mattered so much more than she let on. Every hour you didn't post, didn't confront, didn't explain, was an hour she had to sit with the possibility that you knew something she didn't. You've probably wondered whether staying quiet was the right call. It was. Here's why. A leak depends entirely on your reaction to become the whole story. The second you explain yourself, defend yourself, or lash out, you hand the room a second act to talk about. Your response becomes just as available for dissection as her original story was. Silence denies people that second act. It leaves the story sitting exactly where she left it, unchallenged, unconfirmed, and increasingly uncomfortable the longer nobody hears from you. She checked your page more than she'll ever admit. She watched for a story, a caption, a subtweet, anything that would let her know the leak had landed the way she wanted it to. And every day that passed without a reaction from you started doing something she didn't expect. It made the people around her start asking their own questions instead. Why isn't she saying anything? Why does this feel more like she's protecting herself than protecting the truth? Silence from you created space, and in that space, some of the people who'd laughed along that first night started thinking a little harder about what they'd actually witnessed. This is the part chosen ones rarely get told, so let's say it plainly. Your calm wasn't just self-protection, it was strategy, whether you fully realized it in the moment or not. People who lie need noise to survive. Noise from you, noise from the room, noise that keeps the actual facts buried under emotion. You didn't give her any of it, and a liar standing in silence starts to look exactly like what they are, because there's nothing left in the room to distract from it. Think about how differently the story might have gone if you'd given her the reaction she was fishing for that first week. Every message you'd have sent defending yourself would have become a new screenshot for her to reframe. Every angry comment would have become proof in her telling that you were the unstable one, the dramatic one, the person who couldn't handle a little honesty. She was ready for that version of you. She had a response prepared for every version of you, except the one who simply didn't show up to the fight she was hoping to have. By the time the recording surfaced, your silence had already done half the work. People weren't confused about who to believe, because you'd never given them a competing story to weigh against hers. There was only her performance and your calm. And calm, chosen one, reads as truth far more often than people expect. Number 6. The recording nobody knew existed. Here's where the story turns. Somewhere in the same stretch of nights when she was busy repeating your secrets to anyone who'd listen, a phone was recording a completely different moment. A birthday toast, a joke between two other people, background noise nobody thought twice about. And in that background, sitting untouched in someone's camera roll for weeks, was her voice, clear as anything, telling the exact story she thought she'd only ever have to say once. Nobody went looking for it. That's the detail that unravels her the most. This wasn't a setup. Nobody baited her into confessing. She did it entirely on her own, confidently, in a room she assumed was safe, because she never once considered that the people around her might value the truth more than they valued staying loyal to her. The recording existed by accident. Its discovery was anything but. It sat there quietly for a while, the way most evidence does before the moment it's needed. Some things in this life work exactly like that. Proof doesn't always announce itself the second it's created. Sometimes it waits, buried in a folder nobody's opened, until the right person scrolls back far enough, or the right conversation makes someone remember it exists, or the timing simply arrives on its own schedule instead of anyone else's. And when it did surface, it didn't come from you. That matters more than almost anything else in this story. You never had to go digging for proof. You never had to beg someone to check their phone. The truth found its own way out, carried by someone who wasn't trying to protect you specifically. They were just done watching her rewrite a story that wasn't hers to tell in the first place. That's what real proof does. It doesn't need you to fight for it. It shows up on its own schedule and does the fighting for you. There's something almost poetic about how quietly it waited. Weeks of it sitting in a camera roll between vacation photos and screenshots of memes. Completely unremarkable, completely unnoticed, right up until the exact moment it stopped being background noise and became the center of the entire story. Nobody planned that timing, nobody engineered it. It simply existed, patiently, the way truth tends to when it's confident it doesn't need to rush. Here's what she'll never fully process about that recording. She spent the week convincing herself that words disappear once they're spoken, that a story told out loud has no permanent form, that only screenshots can be traced back to a source. She forgot that a voice is its own kind of fingerprint, and once it's captured, it doesn't blur or distort the way a retold story does. It stays exactly as damning as the moment it was said. Number 7. What was actually on it? This is the part that changed everything, so let's be precise about it. The recording wasn't ambiguous. It wasn't a clip someone could argue was taken out of context, the way people always try to explain away the things they said when they thought no one serious was listening. It was her, naming you directly, repeating the private details word for word, and, this is the part that finished her, laughing about how easy it had been to get you to trust her in the first place. That single detail is what turned the room. People can occasionally forgive a leaked secret if it feels like a slip, a moment of weakness, gossip that got away from someone before they meant it to. What people don't forgive is intention. The recording didn't sound like someone who'd made a mistake. It sounded like someone proud of a plan that worked, someone who'd clearly enjoyed the moment more than she'd ever admit to your face. She also said things in that recording she never said to you directly. The real reasons she'd stayed close to you, the way she talked about your relationship when she thought you'd never hear it, the parts of your friendship she considered useful rather than meaningful. Hearing someone's private opinion of you is one thing. Hearing them describe your friendship as a resource rather than a relationship is an entirely different kind of gut punch, and it's the kind that turns sympathy for her into something much colder, much faster than a simple leaked secret ever could. The recording also did something she never anticipated. It didn't just expose what she did to you, it exposed how she talked about other people in the room when she thought nobody who mattered was listening. Once people heard how casually she discussed you, they started wondering what she said about them the moment they weren't in the room either. That's the part that spreads the fastest. Not sympathy for you specifically, but fear for themselves. Nobody wants to be the next name in a recording like that. By the time the full clip made its way around, there was no version of the story left where she came out looking like anything other than exactly what she was. Not a friend who made one mistake. Someone who built an entire evening around your secrets and enjoyed every second of it. That's the part people who haven't lived it always underestimate. The difference between a leak and a confession. A leak is a story about you. A confession, once it's on tape, is a story about her. Every sentence in that recording pointed the same direction, back toward her own choices, her own tone, her own reasons, until there was nothing left of the original gossip to argue about. The subject of the story quietly changed the moment the recording started playing, and nobody in that room needed it explained to them. They could hear it for themselves. Number 8. The moment it surfaced. There's always a specific moment where a story like this flips, and this was hers. It didn't come with a warning. It didn't come with a chance to control the narrative first. One person sent the clip to someone who mattered. That person sent it to 2 more, and within a single evening, the same speed that had carried her original story around the group turned around and carried the recording just as fast. Except this time, it was carrying the truth instead of her version of it. You can imagine what that night looked like for her, even if you weren't there to see it. The same phone that used to light up with people validating her performance was suddenly lighting up with a different kind of message entirely. Screenshots of people reacting in real time, questions she had no good answer for, silence from people who used to respond within minutes. The shift wasn't gradual. It was immediate, the exact opposite of how slow and controlled her original leak had felt to her. Here's what makes this moment so different from the night she leaked your secrets. She got to choose the timing of that night. She got to pick the room, the audience, the exact framing that made her look clever instead of cruel. She got none of that control back when the recording surfaced. It moved on its own schedule, through people she couldn't manage, and by the time she realized what was happening, it had already reached more people than her original story ever did. There's a strange kind of justice in that detail alone. She spent the leak feeling powerful because she controlled the room. She spent the aftermath feeling powerless because she controlled nothing. Not who saw it, not who shared it, not how fast it moved once it left her hands. The exact tool she used against you, the speed at which a story travels once people can't resist repeating it, turned around and became the thing that ended her version of events for good. You didn't have to lift a finger through any of this. That's worth saying plainly, because it's easy to imagine a version of this story where you had to fight for the truth to come out, where you had to convince people, where you had to build your own case the way she built hers against you. You didn't. The truth built its own case, using her own voice as the only witness it needed. And somewhere in that first night, while her phone kept lighting up with people she couldn't control anymore, yours finally went quiet in a completely different way. Not the silence of waiting to be attacked, but the kind of quiet that comes when you already know how the rest of the story is going to go. Number 9. The room went cold. The same people who laughed the night she told your secrets did not laugh the night they heard her voice on that recording. That's the detail worth sitting with, because it says something true about how people actually respond to cruelty once it's undeniable instead of entertaining. Gossip is fun, right up until it stops being deniable. The moment it becomes proof instead of a story, the room's entire relationship to it changes. People who'd repeated her version of events started going quiet in group chats. Not because they suddenly felt guilty about what they'd repeated, some of them did, but plenty didn't think about you at all in that moment. They went quiet because they realized how easily they could have been the subject of a recording exactly like it, said by someone exactly like her, about them instead of you. Self-preservation moves fast in rooms like that, faster than loyalty ever does. You started noticing the shift, even from a distance. People who hadn't reached out during the leak suddenly had things to say once the recording came out. Careful things, cautious things, the kind of messages people send when they're trying to reposition themselves without admitting they ever needed to. That's not the same as real support, and you know that. But it tells you everything about how quickly a room recalibrates once the actual facts are on the table, instead of just a story someone told convincingly enough. Here's what she felt in that same window, even if nobody ever asked her directly. The energy in every room she walked into afterward was different, and she knew exactly why. People who used to laugh along with her were suddenly measuring their words around her, the same way people measure their words around someone they no longer fully trust. That kind of coldness doesn't need to be announced. It just settles into a room the second everyone in it knows what someone is capable of. The room that let her perform without objection is the same room that turned on her the moment the performance was exposed as exactly what it was. That's not karma in some mystical sense. That's just what happens when the truth finally gets the same stage the lie had. Notice how nobody had to organize that shift. Nobody sent a memo. Nobody held a meeting deciding how the group would treat her differently now. It happened the way temperature changes happen, unannounced, room by room, conversation by conversation, until one day she looked around and realized the warmth she used to walk into everywhere had simply stopped being there. That's what happens when a room finally sees someone clearly. It doesn't need to punish them out loud. It just quietly stops offering them the same comfort it used to hand out for free. Number 10. Her allies started disappearing. This is the part that tends to happen fastest and hurts the person it's happening to the most, even though they rarely admit it out loud. The people who stood closest to her during the leak, the ones who repeated her story, the ones who liked her posts about it, the ones who made sure you knew they'd heard, were the first ones to distance themselves once the recording started circulating. Watch how quickly loyalty rewrites itself once it becomes inconvenient. The same people who once said they'd always have her back suddenly had somewhere else to be. Group chats that used to include her started excluding her from smaller conversations. Invitations quietly stopped. Nobody announced the shift. Nobody needed to. It just happened the way these things always happen, slowly at first, and then all at once. Here's why this part matters so much to your story specifically. She built an entire plan around the idea that the people around her would always choose her version of events, because that's exactly what happened the first time. The night she leaked your secrets, the room chose her. What she never planned for is what happens the second time, when the room has proof instead of a performance to choose between. People who chose her once, out of entertainment, do not choose her twice, out of principle. They were never loyal to her specifically. They were loyal to whichever version of the story was more interesting to repeat. You may have wondered why some of these same people never reached out to you once things flipped. That's worth naming honestly, instead of pretending it doesn't sting. Some people don't come back to apologize. They just quietly stop being part of the problem and hope nobody remembers they ever were. That's not loyalty to you either. It's the same self-preservation instinct that made them distance from her, just aimed in a slightly different direction. Watch what happens to a person once the crowd that used to protect them decides protecting them costs too much. It's not dramatic. There's no final confrontation, no group intervention, no single moment she can point back to and say, "That's when it ended." It's quieter than that, and somehow worse. A slow erosion of invitations, a slow thinning of who replies first, a slow realization that the version of her life built on being liked by everyone in that circle has an expiration date now, and it already passed. Before we go further, if this story is landing for you the way it's meant to, drop 77 in the comments so I know you're still here. And if you want to keep this kind of storytelling going, a super thanks goes a long way. Every bit of it helps this reach the next person sitting exactly where you were the night this all started. Number 11. The apology tour that fooled no one. Once the recording made its rounds, she did what people in her position almost always do. She tried to get ahead of it, not with honesty, with a version of an apology carefully worded enough to sound like accountability, without actually admitting to any of the specifics that made the recording so damning in the first place. She said she was sorry if anyone felt hurt. She said things got taken out of context. She never once said the thing everyone had already heard her say clearly, on tape, in her own voice. People saw through it immediately, and that's not a coincidence. An apology built to protect the person giving it always sounds slightly different from one built to actually repair the harm, and everyone who'd heard the recording could tell exactly which kind this was. She wasn't sorry for what she did. She was sorry it had a witness she couldn't control. She reached out to a few people privately, trying to get individual sympathy where public sympathy had already failed her. Some of them entertained the conversation out of old habit. Most of them didn't respond at all, because once you've heard someone's real voice describing exactly how little your trust meant to them, a private apology starts sounding like more of the same performance rather than a departure from it. Here's what's worth noticing about this stage of the story, chosen one. She never once reached out to you directly with anything resembling real accountability, not because she didn't think about it, she almost certainly did, but because a real apology would have required naming exactly what she did and why, and naming it clearly would have meant giving up the last bit of control she still had over the story. Vague apologies protect the person giving them. Specific ones protect the person who was hurt. She chose the version that protected her, right up to the very end of this, the same way she chose herself the night she leaked your secrets in the first place. You didn't need her apology to move forward, and that's the part she'll never understand about you. You were never waiting on her words to know the truth. You already knew it before anyone else did. Her apology tour wasn't for you. It was never going to be. It was the last performance of someone who'd finally run out of an audience willing to clap. There's a difference between someone who's sorry and someone who's sorry it's happening to them, and most people can tell the difference within the first sentence. Real accountability sounds specific. It names the thing. It doesn't hide behind soft language built to make the listener feel like the difficult one for still being upset. Everyone who heard her half apology could feel the gap between what she said and what actual remorse sounds like, and that gap told them more about her than the original leak ever could. Number 12. The pattern her own voice revealed. Once people started really listening to that recording, instead of just reacting to it, something else started surfacing. This wasn't the first time. People began remembering other stories, other small moments where information moved a little too easily from her mouth to the wrong ears, other friendships that had quietly ended without a clear explanation at the time. Nobody had connected the dots while it was happening. Recordings have a strange way of making dots connect themselves. This is the part that turns a single betrayal into something much bigger and much harder for her to walk back. One leaked secret can be framed as a mistake. A pattern cannot. And once 2 or 3 other people started quietly comparing notes about things she'd said about them, or things they now suspected she'd repeated without ever being caught, the story stopped being about you specifically. It became about who she actually was, underneath years of convincing performances. You may not have known this at the time, but you weren't the first person she'd done this to. You were simply the one who happened to get recorded. That's an uncomfortable thing to sit with, because it means the friendship you thought was uniquely yours, the trust you thought you'd built together over years, was never as unique as it felt. It was a pattern she'd run before, successfully enough that nobody caught her until now. Here's the strange kind of relief hidden inside that discovery, even if it doesn't feel like relief yet. This was never about something uniquely wrong with you, something you did that made you deserve to be exposed the way you were. It was about her. It was always about her. The way she measured relationships, the way she decided what other people's trust was worth to her personal entertainment. You didn't cause this by trusting the wrong things with her. You were simply the version of the pattern that finally had a witness. Think of it like a house with a crack that's always been there, small enough to paint over, small enough to explain away as nothing. One recording doesn't create the crack. It just turns the lights on in the room where everyone's been quietly avoiding looking at it directly. Once the lights are on, nobody can unsee the shape of it, and no amount of new paint changes what's underneath. That's what a pattern does once it's finally visible. It doesn't just explain the present, it rewrites how everyone understands the past. Once that pattern became visible, the people around her stopped treating this as an isolated incident and started treating it as confirmation of something they'd half suspected for a long time. That shift, chosen one, is the one she can never undo. A single mistake gets forgiven eventually. A pattern gets remembered forever. Number 13. Why they turned on her faster than they turned on you. This is worth understanding clearly, because it explains something bigger than just this one story. When the leak first happened, people were slow to react to you, slow to reach out, slow to check in, slow to question the version they were being handed. But when the recording surfaced, people turned on her almost instantly. That difference isn't random, and it isn't really about you or her specifically. It's about what each moment asked of the people watching. Believing a rumor about you cost people nothing. It was easy, low stakes, entertaining even. Continuing to associate with someone who'd been caught, on tape, deliberately harming a friend for entertainment. That costs something. It makes anyone standing next to her afterward look complicit by association. People will happily repeat a story that costs them nothing. They will not happily stand next to someone who's just become a liability. You might feel a flicker of bitterness about that math, and it's fair to feel it. It would have meant something if people had extended you that same speed of judgment the moment the leak happened, instead of waiting for undeniable proof before they moved. But here's the harder truth underneath that bitterness. Most people don't move on principle, they move on risk. The leak felt risk-free to believe. The recording made staying loyal to her feel expensive. That's not justice, arriving out of love for you specifically. It's self-interest finally lining up with the truth, which happens far more often than people like to admit. Still, the outcome is the outcome. The same room that gave her an audience without asking a single question gave her nothing but distance the moment the questions could no longer be avoided. That reversal, however delayed, however self-interested, still landed exactly where it needed to. You didn't need everyone's judgment to be pure, to still end up standing on solid ground, while she stood on none. What she's left with now isn't just a damaged friendship with you. It's a room full of people recalibrating how much they can trust her with anything at all, replaying every private conversation they've ever had with her and wondering what she's said about it to someone else. That's the quiet cost nobody warns people about when they choose to protect a performance instead of a fact. It doesn't just cost the relationship with the person they wronged. It costs every relationship going forward, because trust doesn't rebuild itself evenly once it's been shown to break this easily. People don't just wonder if she'd do it again to you. They wonder if she'd do it to them. And that question, once it exists in someone's mind, never fully leaves. Number 14. The quiet after the storm. Here's where you are now, chosen one, even if it doesn't feel finished yet. The noise has mostly settled. The group chats have mostly gone still. The people who needed to hear the recording have heard it, and the people who needed to see the shift in how others treat her have seen it. What's left isn't chaos anymore. It's a kind of quiet that only shows up after something has been fully resolved, whether or not either of you said another word to each other. You're allowed to notice that this quiet feels different from the silence you held during the leak itself. That silence was strategic, deliberate, a choice you made while waiting for the truth to catch up. This quiet is something else. It's what's left once the truth has already caught up, once there's nothing left to prove and nothing left to defend. That's not the same kind of waiting. That's the version of peace that only exists on the other side of vindication. She, meanwhile, is living inside a very different kind of quiet. The kind that comes from watching people slowly stop including her in things. The kind that comes from knowing her name gets a slightly different reaction in rooms she's no longer in. That's not a punishment you handed her. You never had to hand her anything. It's simply what happens naturally once a room finally has the full story instead of a curated version of it. You don't owe her closure. You don't owe her an explanation of how you feel now, or a conversation about what the friendship meant, or a chance to make her case directly to you one more time. Some relationships end with a conversation. Others end the moment the truth makes the conversation unnecessary. This one ended in her own voice, on a recording she never meant for you to hear, saying more about who she really was than any conversation between the two of you ever could have. What you're left with instead is something quieter and more valuable than an apology would have been anyway. Clarity. You know exactly what she was capable of, exactly how far she was willing to go, and exactly how little warning you would have had if the recording had never surfaced at all. That clarity is worth more than closure. Closure asks you to make peace with an ending. Clarity just tells you the truth and lets you walk forward already knowing it. Some chosen ones spend years waiting for an ending that ties itself into a neat bow, a conversation where everything gets said, an apology that actually lands, a moment where the other person finally understands the full weight of what they did. That moment rarely comes, and waiting for it only keeps you standing in a doorway that already closed behind you. You don't need her understanding to move forward. You already have something better than her understanding. You have the truth, confirmed, in her own voice, and nothing she says now can take that back. Number 15. What this actually means now. Here's the part worth carrying with you long after this story stops being the thing people talk about. What happened to you wasn't proof that trust is dangerous, or that you should go through life guarding every secret like it's a weapon someone might eventually use against you. That's not the lesson here, and it's not the life this story is meant to push you toward. The lesson is smaller and steadier than that. Trust the people who've actually earned it through years of showing up, not just years of saying the right things. And let the people who don't stay earn exactly the distance they gave you first. You didn't do anything wrong by trusting her. Trusting people, even the wrong ones sometimes, is not a flaw to fix. It's evidence of exactly the kind of person you are. Open, loyal, generous with the parts of yourself most people keep locked away. The mistake was never yours to own. It was hers, and now it belongs to her publicly, permanently, in her own voice, whether she ever finds the courage to actually own it or not. You spent the hardest part of this story doing the thing that's hardest for anyone in your position, staying quiet while someone rewrote your life for an audience, and trusting that the truth would eventually get its own turn to speak. It did. It always does, even when it takes longer than you want it to. The recording wasn't luck. It was simply what happens when someone builds an entire performance around a lie loud enough to eventually be overheard by the wrong person at the right time. If you take one thing from this story, let it be this. You never needed to expose her yourself. You never needed to fight for the truth or beg anyone to believe you. You just needed to stay exactly who you already were, steady, quiet, unwilling to match the chaos she was hoping you'd match, and let that steadiness do what it always does, eventually. It outlasts the noise. If this story meant something to you, drop 77 in the comments one more time, so the next chosen one, scrolling through this exact same night, knows they're not the only one who's been here. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't yet, and share it with the one person who needs to hear that the truth always finds its way out eventually, even when it takes its time getting there. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care and goodbye.